Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan Cam, here with a bit of a special video for you today. Uh, y'all ever hear of this movie called The Batman? I mean, it's kind of flown under the radar. And no, I'm just joking. It's made about half a bajillion dollars at the box office. But recently, there was a deleted scene uploaded to YouTube and various other places that showed a little more of a certain clown prince of crime and how he fit into Matt Reeves's Batman universe. And I was kind of debating whether or not to talk about it, but then one of my friends in the YouTube space, Brevon over at Brevon's Flicks and Games, says, "Hey, are you going to be talking about that scene?" And I was like, I was kind of thinking about it, and he volunteered to talk about it with me. And without any further ado, I'm being joined by my good friend Brevon from Brevon's Flicks and Games. Brevon, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, absolutely. So this movie has been a huge hit for about a few weeks now, and long story short, I mean, if anybody has known what I've thought about the Batman, you know that I love it. I thought that it's by far the most fun I've had in the movies all year, right next to Jackass Forever, which I thought was a lot of fun. But in the case of the Batman, it delivers a lot that a lot of Batman fans would love. I mean, will definitely love it. Like draws like a lot from the comics. It delivers amazing performances. And at first, when I saw this deleted scene that Warner Brothers recently released almost about a week ago, which featured Barry Keoghan's Joker. I hope I said his name right. At first, I didn't know what to make of that scene. Well, first, when we first see him in the actual film during the final cut at the end when he meets Riddler at Arkham Asylum. At first, I didn't know who this character was supposed to be until I heard that laugh, and I was like, "Oh, it's another Joker." But then when we get that deleted scene, it's clear that he has some history with Batman because in that scene, he discusses that it's been a year since their first encounter before the events of the film, and Batman, they're interrogating Joker, is trying to get his thoughts on. I mean, trying to get Joker's thoughts on like the Riddler's murders, and this scene was kind of like if you've seen like movies like The Silence of the Lambs, Red Dragon, or Manhunter, you can see what they were going with because in this scene, Joker is very much like Hannibal Lecter, and Batman in this scene is basically Clarice Starling or Edward Norton's character, Will. I think that's what his character's name was. But you definitely get that vibe. And I think that this scene, for the most part, is very well acted. As for how he will fit in this franchise, however, I am okay with this version of Joker, and this is definitely the most creepiest looking Joker that we've seen since probably Heath Ledger, in my personal opinion. As for what I want in the sequel, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not quite ready for another Joker to be another main villain for a Batman film quite just yet. Even though I think Barry Keoghan is a fantastic actor, and I think that from what we've seen in the film and in the scene, that he could be a really good Joker. But after recently seeing Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight and Jared Leto in the DCEU, and of course Joaquin Phoenix, I'm not really ready for another Batman movie with Joker. And I don't know if anybody will absolutely agree with me on this. I know there are some that might support my opinion, or some people will probably don't care and just be like, "Oh, well, it's another Joker, so let's just see how he'll do in this one." But I'm not quite ready just yet because there's so much more Batman villains to see on the big screen. There are some that we haven't seen yet that I definitely want to see. And there's some that we have seen before, either have been handled pretty weak, that definitely needs a little bit of a retake, so to speak. And I'll get onto that in a bit. But I would like to hear Ryan's thoughts on this. Back to you, Ryan.
Well, I actually I like the scene overall, but I can understand why it was deleted. I think in the grand scheme of things, it just felt like a weird detour if it was put into the actual movie proper. Like, it would have felt like having the Joker there for the sake of like, because Batman must always fight the Joker, just having the Joker there, just having him there. I'm glad the scene got deleted. However, in a bubble, I like what they did here. And to your point about the Hannibal Lecter factor, I got that like right away. It's clear when I was watching this. I was like, Matt Reeves has clearly seen all of the or not all the Silence of the Lambs, but all of the Hannibal Lecter movies at least once, because there was a dash of Manhunter, a dash of Silence of the Lambs, and a dash of Red Dragon. It was a mixture of all three. And also to your point, I'm not sure if I'm ready for this version of Joker just yet, because like you said, we've gotten like 3 versions in like just the 2010s alone, at least 2 or 3. We got the Leto one, which I am not a fan of personally. I think Jared Leto is a very talented actor. Let's not get that twisted. But Hot Topic Joker just did not work for me. And while I love the Todd Phillips Joker movie and Joaquin Phoenix's performance was outstanding, it definitely was quite a lot. And so when I heard that there was another Batman movie being made with Matt Reeves, I was like, please don't do the Joker, at least not yet. And he started off with the Riddler, and Paul Dano knocked it out of the ballpark. But like you said, I want to see more villains. I think where they left off, and we'll be discussing spoilers in this video. I should have said that at the onset, but spoiler warning. After the Riddler's bombs destroy the dam and Gotham becomes oceanfront property, pretty much, I want to see a different type of villain. I would love to see something like the Court of Owls. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that storyline. The Court of Owls is basically a secret like society living within Gotham. They've been there since Gotham's beginnings. They're like these elites. They thrive they thrive on just crushing the lower classes. Their assassin is called the Talon. It's basically the Winter Soldier. It's a programmable assassin. And with everything, how the Batman left things off, basically Gotham is like living under martial law. This would be a perfect opportunity for the Court of Owls to appear, or maybe something like do a No Man's Land type story where each villain gets their own separate corner of Gotham to rule as their own, and Batman has to knock them out one at a time. Something like that. So when I first heard that this scene was out, I was like, oh man, this is just going to be just their attempt to hamstring the Joker in there somewhere, like shoehorn him in. But in a vacuum, I did like the scene. And if they do bring Barry Keoghan back, I think it would be intriguing to see what they do with him.
I definitely thought the same thing as well. And when you mentioned that you would like to see the Court of Owls and the sequel or whatever they plan to do for this franchise, because we know that they plan to make at least like 2 sequels for this franchise and 2 HBO Max shows. One that will be focused on the Penguin, who is played brilliantly by Colin Farrell, and I definitely want to see more of his Penguin. And one show that is centered on Arkham Asylum. And I think that Barry Keoghan's Joker would fit perfectly as one of the main characters in that series, rather than just be the main villain of a Batman film. As for what you mentioned before with Gotham being flooded at the end of the film, and you mentioned the Court of Owls, I think that Matt Reeves or Robert Pattinson said in one interview that they definitely would want to have the Court of Owls in a sequel, and I definitely would too. But on the topic of Gotham being flooded, I think this would be a perfect scenario for a character like Mr. Freeze, who Matt Reeves said in one interview that he would definitely want to use Mr. Freeze for a sequel. And I think it's high time that we saw him again, especially since the last time that we saw Mr. Freeze was when Arnold played him in 1997. And as you all know, that didn't turn out really well. And it turned out with it turned out with hilarious results because we all know how hilariously bad Arnold was in that film. And I think it's high time for Mr. Freeze to be handled properly. And I think that he would work for the sequel. And as for other villains, I think that they discussed who they should have in the sequel. I think they discussed Calendar Man, which I would definitely want to see. That would be interesting either in the sequel or the TV series, especially since he was a major character in one of my favorite Batman graphic novels, The Long Halloween. And I think they discussed Hush at one point, which definitely would be interesting. But with Gotham being underwater, being flooded at the end of the film, I think this would be perfect for a villain like Mr. Freeze. But we'll see. We'll see what they'll do with either the TV shows or the sequels.
Yeah, like you said, Mr. Freeze would be perfect for an environment like this. I mean, considering that Gotham's like partially underwater, that's like asking for like a Mr. Freeze type of like just aim a big freeze gun at that big old puddle there and just like winter in Gotham forever. And Mr. Freeze and Mr. Freeze is long overdue for a gritty readaptation. Unfortunately, the only people that seemed to get him right was Paul Dini and the team at Batman the Animated Series. If any of you have never seen the Batman Animated Series episode Heart of Ice, go out of your way to watch it. If you watch just one episode of that show, watch that one. The monologue that Mr. Freeze has with the whole "my beauty frozen in ice," and he ends up with "revenge is a dish best served cold," and you see his eyes glow up red. It's like, that is just outstanding.
It absolutely is. I mean, compared to how Mr. Freeze was handled in Batman and Robin, that episode in the animated series Heart of Ice is a goddamn masterpiece compared to how Arnold was handled as Mr. Freeze in Batman and Robin. But yeah, if they go in with what Paul Dini and Bruce Timm did with the character in the animated series, I definitely would prefer to see something similar to that version of Freeze in this franchise.
Yeah, absolutely. And not to mention, you were bringing up Hush and Calendar Man. It's been a while since I've read The Long Halloween. I should get that out there right here and now, but I did really love it. And Calendar Man would definitely fit in a world like this. It just depends on which actor that they get to play him. That's really what it boils down to, at least for me.
Yeah, I thought so too. And I don't know if either he could probably fit for a sequel or the Arkham show. I mean, I think personally, I think it would be more fitting if he was in the Arkham series that they're setting up on HBO Max. I think that would fit perfectly for that character. As for Hush, I definitely would want to see him in this franchise in a sequel. As for what they would do with the character, I would definitely say do something that would follow elements from the Hush storyline, which I really love. But as for what they'll do, I mean, I'm honestly looking forward to seeing what they'll do and of course, there's the Penguin show. I don't know. As for the Penguin show, I don't know if they'll like focus on like uh, Penguin basically becoming the new kingpin of Gotham after the death of Carmine Falcone near the end of the film, or if it'll mostly focus on his backstory. But either way, I mean, like I said, Colin Farrell was phenomenal as the Penguin and the Batman, and for what they'll do with the character, I definitely can't wait to see what they'll do.
Yeah, Colin Farrell was unrecognizable in that movie. And going into it, I had no idea how large or small his role was going to be. And it's definitely, I don't want to say it's like diluted, but it's definitely more as like a side player. But let's just say Colin Farrell definitely maximized his minutes with the car chase, which is one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie, to to the comedic relief with Batman Gordon and him, where he's tied up and you literally see him walk off like a penguin. I thought that was that was a nice bit of levity in this very dark movie. So
That was hilarious.
Colin Farrell definitely understood the assignment here, and I would definitely love to see him. I'm glad that they went in this direction with the Penguin, because really the only other movie where we saw the Penguin was Batman Returns. And I said in my review that we did a collab on, I believe, uh, I said in my review that I wasn't a humongous fan of this performance. I like Danny DeVito as an actor, but I was not a huge fan of him basically being like this feral animal, like just biting people's noses off and like eating fish raw and all of that stuff. I prefer the Penguin to be looking like a deformed monster, but acting like a downright gentleman. This is another thing that the animated series did really well. Like the Penguin is super like posh, and he uses fancy words and knows what they mean. And he treats his criminal enterprise like an actual business. Think more along the lines of like Walter White in Breaking Bad and not Heisenberg, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, to a certain extent, I can understand what you're talking about. And I mean, honestly, I do prefer Colin Farrell's Penguin over Danny DeVito's Penguin from Batman Returns. And I would much prefer, I mean, uh, given the grittier tone, given the grittier tone that uh, they're taking for this series, and uh, in more recent years, I mean, Penguin is now more depicted as like a gangster type character compared to like this like uh, gentleman uh, who like I mean who is a criminal, and he has like his own enterprise but treats it as like you said as a legitimate business. And I'm okay with this take on Penguin compared to Danny DeVito, because like you, I do like the concept of the Penguin being this tragic freak, but having him act like an animal, I mean, I was very mixed on it, and after watching Batman Returns recently. But given the given the direction that they're going with for this franchise, what they'll decide to do, I mean, I honestly uh, don't know what they'll do, but like I mentioned before, I'm looking forward to it, and Colin Farrell will most definitely knock it out of the park.
Yeah, without question. And really, with this Batman movie, there's like an endless amount of possibilities for the sequels and the series, like you were mentioning. This is just like the tip of the iceberg in terms of the directions that they could go. I was talking to my friend Jacob on our podcast, Life in the Movies. I was mentioning I wish they went in like not in a completely different direction, but maybe over the course of time, because we have two movies, maybe dip into a bit more like a deeper cut of a Batman villain, like a Hugo Strange, perhaps, or bring back Poison Ivy, if you will. I mean, there's definite seeds planted there. I mean, you could definitely do something like, say, the whole blow up the dam thing. Pamela Isley could be like this environmentalist, or I believe that's the correct term, or it's a botanist or something like that. She could come.
along the lines.
I'm in the right ballpark, but
Yeah.
she could come into Gotham like with the best of intentions, but she gets corrupted and she becomes, the poison ivy that we know, and something like that. Maybe you could do. Maybe you could slowly introduce someone like a Harvey Dent and maybe do a Two-Face. I would love to see a Two-Face done in this world. I don't think it would be as good as Aaron Eckhart in The Dark Knight, but in considering the theme that anything that arrives in this Gotham City pretty much gets corrupted, I mean, it would be nice to see Harvey Dent presented as the White Knight and then see the slow descent of that. But that's just me, at least.
I do think that would be an interesting concept. Like you mentioned, them probably introducing Harvey Dent. I would want to see mostly Harvey Dent in the sequel and not like have him become Two-Face quite just yet, or like if he does become Two-Face, save it for a third film at least. I mean, that's my personal opinion. And as for Hugo Strange, that I really want to see either in the Arkham TV show or a sequel, because he's a very well-known although he's a very well-known Batman villain, he for some reason, I mean, in terms of live action appearances, he's only appeared on the Gotham show, and he was one of my favorite aspects of one of my favorite video games, Batman Arkham City. And I think it's probably way overdue for him to make an appearance on a live action film, because having a psychiatrist who is aware that Bruce Wayne is Batman, what they can do with a story for that in a live action film is filled with pretty much endless possibilities. And as for Poison Ivy, I definitely would want to see another take on that character, because like Mr. Freeze, she hasn't appeared in a live action film since Uma Thurman played her in Batman and Robin. And although I can enjoy her moments in a sort of guilty pleasure-ish sort of way, her moments in the film alone were just laughable. But having a different take on the character in this franchise, having her be like this environmentalist or botanist type character who, I mean, if they decided to put this in this universe, I honestly do not know what they'll do, depending on like how grounded or I mean, even though this film is like very grounded, it's not afraid to be a comic book in my opinion, but the Nolan films were so realistic, and the Burton and the Schumacher films took elements from the comics, and they're almost to a point where it can almost feel a little bit like a Saturday morning cartoon. But if they do decide to like introduce like supernatural elements into this franchise, at least take it seriously. That's all that I can say. But I would like to see another take on Poison Ivy, since she's one of my personal favorite Batman villains. But yeah, I mean, that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, one thing, and this just came to me, one thing that we haven't really touched on is the relationship with Alfred, because one of the plot points that is brought up is the fact that Thomas Wayne was in some relations with Carmine Falcone. And while one of my main hangups, and it was like, I loved the movie, but this was like my one kind of thing that I didn't really agree with, is the fact that Thomas Wayne and Carmine Falcone had some dealings with each other, and the movie kind of presents him as this bad person. I don't know, maybe I'm just spoiled on Thomas Wayne. I just know him from something like the Flashpoint Paradox, where in the Flashpoint Paradox, Bruce Wayne ends up dying in that alley that night, and Thomas Wayne becomes the Batman. Or in Batman Begins, where we see, in his limited scenes, we see him like pick up Bruce from the bottom of like what would become the Batcave and say, "Why do we fall, Bruce? So we can learn to pick ourselves up." And so So I guess I'm spoiled on what a good Thomas Wayne is supposed to be, but I just wasn't a fan of this decision. But it's like a small thing on the grand scheme of things. I think I would like to see explored the relationship going forward between Bruce and Alfred, it's because Bruce is not exactly happy at the prospect of Alfred basically covering this up for a large chunk of his life. And I just hope that this plot point isn't just dropped, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah, that I understand. As for like that plot point alone, with like Thomas Wayne revealed to have like some dealings with Falcone, or like however these movies want to pronounce it, really, is with Alfred like um, uh, not revealing this to Bruce for most of his life. Uh, Although I do like Andy Serkis as Alfred, I mean he's like one of the few characters that I actually like who got the least amount of screen time, and I definitely want them to improve that in the sequel because I mean you have this man who's basically Bruce's father figure, and uh, back to the subject of like Thomas Wayne like getting involved with Falcone. Uh, when this when the Riddler reveals this to the public and Bruce discovers this, I mean, this, like I mentioned before I mean, I didn't spoil this in my spoiler-free review for the Batman, that this was like one of the few moments that shocks Bruce to his core. I mean, when he confronts Falcone about this, I mean, he tells him that Thomas Wayne came to him because he wanted him to like deal with this reporter who knew some pretty disturbing things about Martha Wayne and was gonna blow the whistle on Thomas Wayne, so to speak. And so Thomas had Falcone tried to like put some fear into this guy, but instead he ended up having him murdered. And when Bruce is pissed off and he confronts Alfred about this, he's like, he tells him that Thomas did go to Falcone, but after he heard that he had the reporter killed, Thomas was like, he was like distraught, like Alfred said in the film, and he was going to go to the police and testify against Falcone. But then this later resulted in the death of the Waynes. So in a way, in this film, Falcone indirectly created Batman. And that aspect alone I thought was interesting and offered like a new, different take on the Waynes, because I thought that for the most part, I mean, and I think that a large chunk of the fans thought that this was mostly like a squeaky clean element of Bruce's past, with the Waynes, I mean, mostly seen as like good people. But I think it's an interesting take on like what if they made like a few mistakes. And I thought that for the most part was an interesting take on the Waynes.
Yeah, and I was actually thinking about this when I was watching it. The whole reporter side of things, there's a part of me that hopes that that comes back in some form or fashion, because I was thinking to myself, wait, would this reporter happen to be the father of Edward Nygma, like the father of the Riddler? But I don't think that there's any relation there. I don't know, I might have missed that, but I don't know. I just hope that gets touched on at some point. And while you were talking, another thought came to my head. In terms of the sequels, I certainly hope that the Catwoman comes back, because I thought Zoe Kravitz knocked it out of the ballpark with her turn as Catwoman. And how did you feel about the revelation that she was Falcone's daughter? I thought it was actually I actually kind of liked it. I don't know about you.
I thought it was very shocking, honestly. And uh, I do agree with you that I do want to see Zoe Kravitz back as Catwoman, because I thought that she was excellent throughout the film. And I think that she's probably my favorite Catwoman since probably Michelle Pfeiffer. As for like the twist overall that she was revealed to be Falcon's daughter, uh, like I mentioned before, that shocked me. And I do like how her and Batman's relationship is handled throughout the film. And it's clear that they have like a good connection and they have a good relationship. And at the end of the film, when she leaves Gotham, because she feels like the city is beyond saving, because they present Gotham as like the biggest shithole that you can possibly imagine, because you have a city that's flooded with crime, corruption, crooked cops, drugs, and all of this. And she feels like she's seen enough and she wants nothing to do with the city anymore. And Batman is basically fighting for a lost cause, because he's fighting for a city that's basically almost beyond saving. And they kind of like discuss something like that in Batman Begins, because the League of Shadows in Batman Begins, they're, because of their quest to destroy Gotham, they felt like Gotham was beyond saving and feels like that it needs to die. I don't know if they would like bring back Ra's al Ghul or the League of Assassins or the League of Shadows. I mean, depending on like what they name the organization, I honestly don't care. But if they do decide to bring them back, I think that would be interesting. But at the same time, I'm very conflicted on them bringing those characters back for this film. But I don't know. As for Catwoman overall, with her leaving Gotham, it almost made, I mean, it definitely made me feel sad. And I really hope that they bring Zoe Kravitz back, either in the sequel or maybe they'll give her her own TV series. But I don't know. But that's just my personal take on this.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up Ra's al Ghul, and that was someone that I hadn't even considered before. I mean, I thought that the League of Shadows was done pretty well in the Nolan films. That really, I don't really see any one version being better than that one. I mean, anything could happen, and I won't go any further into it because it's above my pay grade. But due to like recent news, a League of Shadows would be interesting to see how it is portrayed in the Batman world of Matt Reeves. I think if they do decide to go in there, and I'm not saying that I want to, I'm just saying that if it does happen, it's a big if currently. This is like perfect world type stuff. It'll be interesting to see how that happens.
It definitely would be interesting. And I do think that it would be pretty difficult to like, I don't want to say like top what Nolan did for his trilogy in the case of the League of Shadows and Ra's al Ghul, but I think it would be pretty damn difficult to come up with a new story for that character. But like you mentioned, I mean, anything can happen in Matt Reeves' franchise. But what they decide to do, I'm more than excited to see what Matt Reeves does, because I've always supported his work as a filmmaker. I mean, all of it. I mean, he's never really made a bad film, in my opinion. I love Cloverfield, Let Me In, and both of his Planet of the Apes films. And what he has done for Batman, I really respect his vision for this character, and what he'll do for this franchise gets me really excited, and I really can't wait for what will be in store in the future.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more on the Matt Reeves side of things, because it's clear he knows exactly what he's doing with this character. And I don't think that the Batman is necessarily perfect. I think it's just a skosh too long, and the whole Thomas Wayne stuff is not for me. But it's still my favorite movie of 2022. It is the one that just got to me the most. And so it's going to be hard to take that spot. But I guess to put the period at the end of the sentence of this video, whatever happens, I have a sizable amount of trust, not complete trust, but a sizable amount of trust in Matt Reeves and whatever they decide to do going forward, because it's clear that he knew what he was doing here, and it's clear that he has at least an idea of what he wants to do going forward. And it's nice when movies follow like plans, if you will.
Yeah, I do agree with you on that. And Matt Reeves definitely for sure knows what he's doing. And I mean, in terms of his work as a filmmaker, I mean, he's an artist. And given with what he had to work with, especially with like all the issues involving Ben Affleck and his Batman film being like, shall we say, a bit complicated. And honestly, I would have wanted to see Ben Affleck's Batman film, because I'm pretty sure that a lot of us at this point would have wanted to see what his vision for a Batman film would have been. And for Matt Reeves' case, I think I'm okay with what I can get, because I mean, I loved his film, and stepping into Ben Affleck's boots, I mean, even though this is completely separate from the DCEU, I think for the most part that Matt Reeves did a great job with his film. In terms of the DCEU, I really wanted to see what Ben Affleck would have done. And I heard recently in an interview that Sam Raimi is more than interested to make a Batman film. And I am more than happy to see that, because honestly, he would be a good choice to direct a Batman movie in the DCEU. I mean, given his history with superhero films, I mean, with his Spider-Man films, and most recently he's directed Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which I can't wait to check out. But hearing that he's interested to make a Batman film, I'm like, how could that not be amazing? That's such a great idea.
Yeah, and back to the Ben Affleck point really quick. I was pulling for that solo Batfleck movie so hard, because it was like from mid 2016 to like early 2018, the news in the DCEU front was just so depressing. Like, it was just so not fun to sit through. It's like, this needs new writers, and this script is going back to square one. And it was just like, guys, come on, there's got to be a brain amongst you to steady this ship. It seems like finally, they're, at the very least, DC is back to making at least quality films again. I got hyped when they released that whole The World Needs Heroes little snippet in February with Batman and the new Aquaman, and, well, I wanted to say the new Flash movie, but it's going to be, that whole thing is another discussion in and of itself. But it's given me a little bit of hope that at least they've stayed on the course. And last year with the Suicide Squad, which was one of my favorite movies of the year, it seems like someone has a solid head on their shoulders and is like at least guiding them in the right direction. It'll be sad that we'll probably never see the solo Batfleck movie, especially because I love Batman v Superman, the Ultimate Edition. It is not perfect, but I have a soft spot for it. And with Zack Snyder's Justice League just being outstanding, it just proved that it was just like completely short-sighted on their part. But again, that's a whole nother discussion for a whole nother video. I think we should close out by saying this. I think we're both pretty excited for the Batman sequel from Matt Reeves, and whatever happens next, I think we all await with bated breath. I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, what comes next in the future? I mean, I honestly can't wait to see. I mean, Batman's one of my. I mean, he's definitely my favorite superhero. It's always between him and Spider-Man. But what they decide to do in the future for this character, either in the Matt Reeves universe or in the DCEU, doesn't matter. I'm always excited to see what they'll do with the character and what happens in the future. We just gotta wait and see. So I want to give a big thank you to Ryan for inviting me to for this this in this discussion. I mean, there was definitely a whole lot of fun. I was very excited to do this, and again, thank you. And thank you so much, as always, for watching. I'm looking forward to doing more videos really soon, or on Ryan's channel or my channel, Brevon's Flicks and Games. And if you want my thoughts on old or new films, of course, you know where to find me.
Yeah, Brevon's channel will be in the description of the video. I highly recommend that you check him out. And as for this channel, if you like this video, please be sure to hit that like button, comment your thoughts down below, and also to hit the subscribe button and click the bell to allow notifications. That way, whenever a new video drops, you'll be the first to know about it. But that is all for us. Until next time, that's Brevon. My name is Ryan Cam. We'll see you in the next one. Take care.